Hello students, welcome to the lecture on transport, communication and trade, and after this lecture we will be able to learn the following objectives. Explain the modes of transportation and their types, describe about roads and their types, understand communication and explain about pipelines and their types and importance. Modes of transportation. Let us begin with modes of transportation. The principal modes of world transportation are land, water, air and pipelines. The significance of a mode depends on the type of goods and services to be transported, costs of transport and the mode available. International movement of goods is handled by ocean freighters. Road transport is cheaper and faster over short distances and for door-to-door services. Railways are most suited for large volumes of bulky materials over long distances within a country. High-value, light and perishable goods are best moved by airways. Land transport. Most of the movement of goods and services takes place over land. In early days, humans themselves were carriers. With the invention of the wheel, the use of carts and wagons became important. The revolution in transport came about only after the invention of the steam engine. Road transport. Road transport is the most economical for short distances. Freight transport by road is gaining importance because it offers door-to-door service. Roads play a vital role in a nation's trade and commerce and for promoting tourism. The quality of the roads varies greatly between developed and developing countries because road construction and maintenance require heavy expenditure. Highways. Highways are metallic roads connecting distant places. They are constructed in a manner for unobstructed vehicular movement. Border roads. Roads laid along international boundaries are called border roads. They play an important role in integrating people in remote areas with major cities and providing defense. Almost all countries have such roads to transport goods to border villages and military camps. Railways. Railways are a mode of land transport for bulky goods and passengers over long distances. During the rainy season, non-metal roads become unmotable and even the metal ones are seriously handicapped during heavy rains and floods. In such conditions, the high embankment of rail tracks and the efficient maintenance of railway transport service is an effective solution. There are many types of railways. Conventional, mostly outdoors using diesel, electric or steam locomotives. It supports passenger and freight trains. Subways, a form of public transportation usually used below ground on isolated track, can only support passengers. Monorail, a train suspended from a single rail usually higher than the ground, usually supporting only passengers. Maglev, the same as a conventional railway but elevated a few feet from the ground. It floats a few centimeters from its track because of magnetic levitation. Water transport. One of the greatest advantages of water transportation is that it does not require route construction. The oceans are linked with each other and are negotiable with ships of various sizes. All that is needed is to provide port facilities at the two ends. It is much cheaper because the friction of water is far less than that of land. The energy cost of water transportation is lower. Water transport can be categorized into inland waterways. Inland waterways refer to using inland water bodies like rivers, canals, backwaters, creeks, etc. for transporting goods and people from one place to another. India has a long historical tradition of using such waterways. Ganga, Brahmaputra, Indus, Yamuna, Mahanadi, Godavari, Krishna, Kaveri, Narmada and Tapi etc. were the main arteries of the country's transport system, giving birth to a number of inland river ports and jetties. Canals. The Buckingham Canal, 412.8 km, is an important navigation canal in Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu. It runs parallel to the eastern coast, joining all the coastal districts from Guntur to South Arcot. It is 315 km long north of Chennai and 100 km south of it. Its northern part connects the Komamarur Canal of the Krishna Delta, while the southern part terminates in Marakkanupi backwaters. Some of the irrigation canals of Uttar Pradesh and Punjab are also utilized for local transport. Airways. Air transport is the fastest means of transportation, but it is very costly. Being fast, it is preferred by passengers for long distance travel. Valuable cargo can be moved rapidly on a worldwide scale. It is often the only means to reach inaccessible areas. Air transport has brought about a connectivity revolution in the world. The frictions created by mountainous snowfields or inhospitable desert terrains have been overcome. The accessibility has increased. Air transport can be in various forms. Hot air balloons. The first successful type of air transportation that carried humans was the hot air balloon. The Montgolfier brothers developed the idea of designing a large bag or balloon that held hot air in the late 1700s. Passengers and the heat source were placed in a gondola or wicker basket underneath the balloon. Since hot air rises, the balloon flew according to the direction of the wind. By cooling the balloon's temperature, the passengers safely floated back to Earth. Blimps. An offshoot of the hot air balloon is the blimp. Blimps have been around since the end of the 19th century and were first used as scouting tools by various militaries. The technology has developed into a convenient and cost-effective way to travel and advertise products. To float, blimps use hot air and large fans attached to the gondola underneath. They can be deflated for storage or transportation and inflated cheaply when service is needed. Zeppelins. Zeppelins were built in the early 20th century based on designs by Count Ferdinand von Zeppelin. Visually, Zeppelins appear very much like blimps, figure 9.9. However, they differ on two key points. Zeppelins have a metal skeleton with a rigid covering and they are filled with hydrogen. Airplanes. The fixed-wing aircraft is the most popular form of air transportation available. According to FlightAware, a flight tracking organization, there are 49,315 commercial flights around the world each day that use fixed-wing aircraft. Fixed-wing aircraft are distinguishable from other types of air transportation in that they achieve lift through forward motion. A long runway is needed for the vehicles to achieve enough velocity to become airborne. Airplanes use a propeller or jet engine to power the aircraft, and the wings act as a stabilizer for keeping the vehicle in the air. Helicopters. With the success of the fixed-wing aircraft, engineers and technicians looked for a way to make the general principles of airplanes, sustained and fast flight, more efficient. The goal was to develop a flying vehicle that could take off from a sitting position and carry people to another location. This invention is the helicopter. Helicopters are propelled using horizontal rotors consisting of 2 or more blades. However, most models can only carry 4 to 6 people, limiting its commercial use. The primary applications for helicopters are in the military, law enforcement, medical news, or fire control sectors. Rockets. Perhaps the most advanced form of air transportation comes in the form of rockets. Rockets use thrust obtained via the chemical reaction of a fluid that is ejected at high velocities from the vehicle. The force from the explosion within the vehicle's combustion chamber forces gases out of the tail of the rocket, pushing the vehicles to extremely high speeds. The principle is based on inertia in that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Pipelines. Pipelines are used extensively to transport liquids and gases such as water, petroleum and natural gas for an uninterrupted flow. Water supplied through pipelines is familiar to all. Cooking gas or LPG is supplied through pipelines in many parts of the world. Pipelines can also be used to transport liquidities, coal. In New Zealand, milk is being supplied through pipelines from farms to factories. There are 4 types of pipelines. Gathering lines. These lines travel short distances, gathering products from wells and move them to oil batteries or natural gas processing facilities. Feeder lines. Feeder lines move products from batteries, processing facilities and storage tanks in the field to the long distance haulers of the pipeline industry, the transmission pipelines. Transmission lines. Transmission lines are the energy highways transporting oil and natural gas within a province and across provincial or international boundaries. Distribution lines. Local distribution companies, LDCs, operate natural gas distribution lines. Communications. Human beings have used different methods, long distance communications, of which the telegraph and the telephone were important. The telegraph was instrumental in the colonization of the American West. During the early and mid-20th century, the American Telegraph and Telephone Company, AT&T, enjoyed a monopoly over USA's telephone industry. In fact, the telephone became a critical factor in the urbanization of America. Today, there is a phenomenal pace of development. The first major breakthrough is the use of optic fiber cables, OFC. Faced with mounting competition, telephone companies all over the world soon upgraded their copper cable systems to include optic fiber cables. These allow large quantities of data to be transmitted rapidly, securely, and are virtually error-free. Communication can be categorized into satellite communication. Communication through satellites emerged as a new era in communication technology since the 1970s after USA and former USSR pioneered space research. Figure 9.14. Artificial satellites now are successfully deployed in the Earth's orbit to connect even the remote corners of the globe with limited on-site verification. These have rendered the unit cost and time of communication invariant in terms of distance. This means it costs the same to communicate over 500 km as it does over 5,000 km via satellite. India has also made great strides in satellite development. Aryabhat was launched on 19th April 1979, Bhaskar 1 in 1979 and Rohini in 1980. Cyberspace Internet. Cyberspace is the world of electronic computerized space. It is encompassed by the Internet such as the World Wide Web WWW. In simple words, it is the electronic digital world for communicating or accessing information over computer networks without physical movement of the sender and the receiver. It is also referred to as the Internet. The Internet is not a physical or tangible entity, but rather a giant network which interconnects innumerable smaller groups of linked computer networks. It is thus a network of networks. This is best understood if one considers what a linked group of computers referred to here as a network is and what it does. Radio. Radio is one of the best means of communication today. Radio broadcasting has enabled distant communication. Today, there are a vast number of radio stations around the globe broadcasting by means of transmission. If we do not have much info about radio broadcast and would like to gather detailed information on this subject, then you have just landed at the right place. Television. Television is a telecommunication medium for transmitting and receiving moving images that can be monochrome or colored with or without accompanying sound. In 1926, John Logie Baird demonstrated television in London. This was an amazing breakthrough in technology, but it was many years before ordinary people could afford to have a television set in their home. International trade. Trade means the voluntary exchange of goods and services. Two parties are required to trade. One person sells and the other purchases. In certain places, people barter their goods. For both the parties, trade is mutually beneficial. Trade may be conducted at two levels, international and national. International trade is the exchange of goods and services among countries across national boundaries. Changing patterns of India's trade. During the 1950s, India and China, like many other developing countries, chose the import substitution strategy for industrial development. The strategy involved insulation from the world economy and industrialization under the aegis of state enterprises. Subsequently, there has been a paradigm shift from import substitution to outward orientation in many of the developing countries, including India and China. China started the trade liberalization process in a major way in 1978. India's liberalization initiatives during the 1980s focused primarily on internal deregulation rather than on trade liberalization. The most pronounced overhaul of India's trade policy regime occurred during the early 1990s in response to a severe balance of payment crisis. Foreign trade. Foreign trade is nothing but trade between the different countries of the world. It is also called as international trade, external trade, or inter-regional trade. It consists of imports, exports, and interport. The inflow of goods in a country is called import trade, whereas outflow of goods from a country is called export trade. There are three types of foreign trade. Import trade. Import trade refers to purchase of goods by one country from another country or inflow of goods and services from foreign country to home country. Export trade. Export trade refers to the sale of goods by one country to another country or outflow of goods from home country to foreign country. Entreport trade. Entreport trade is also known as re-export. It refers to purchase of goods from one country and then selling them to another country after some processing operations. Let us now talk on the need and importance of foreign trade. Division of labor and specialization. Foreign trade leads to division of labor and specialization at the world level. Some countries have abundant natural resources. They should export raw materials and import finished goods from countries which are advanced in skilled manpower. Optimum allocation and utilization of resources. Due to specialization, unproductive lines can be eliminated and wastage of resources avoided. In other words, resources are channelized for the production of only those goods which would give highest returns. Equality of prices. Prices can be stabilized by foreign trade. It helps to keep the demand and supply position stable, which in turn stabilizes the prices, making allowances for transport and other marketing expenses. availability of multiple choices. Foreign trade helps in providing a better choice to the consumers. It helps in making available new varieties to consumers all over the world. Ensures quality and standard goods. Foreign trade is highly competitive. To maintain and increase the demand for goods, the exporting countries have to keep up the quality of goods. Thus, quality and standardized goods are produced. Raises standard of living of the people. Imports can facilitate standard of living of the people. This is because people can have a choice of new and better varieties of goods and services. By consuming new and better varieties of goods, people can improve their standard of living. Summary. Now in the end, let us summarize what we have learnt in this lecture. Transport is a service or facility for the carriage of persons and goods from one place to the other using humans, animals, and different kinds of vehicles. Such movements take place over land, water, and air. Roads and railways form part of land transport, while shipping and waterways and airways are the other two modes. The significance of a mode depends on the type of goods and services to be transported, costs of transport, and the mode available. International movement of goods is handled by ocean freighters. Road transport is cheaper and faster over short distances and for door-to-door services. Railways are most suited for large volumes of bulky materials over long distances within a country. High value, light and perishable goods are best moved by airways.